Today I'm going to be cutting a piece of black opal. This is a piece of rough from the Lightning Ridge area of Australia. So here's the rough, go ahead and take a look. Whoa, right? I mean, that looks like it's going to be a pretty nice opal. Here's the things I want you to look at very closely if you watch that little video of the rough. One, there are some bits of white pooch on the sides that will need to be cut off. Two, and this is the most important part, the direction of the fire is very directional. That's what they call it, directional. It's not face up bright. So as you look at it, the color play becomes very bright when the stone is held at an angle. And this will play a large role in the value of the finished stone. Now, we can't really say for sure exactly how it's going to play out until the stone is cut, but this is a bit of an indicator of what we're going to get later down the line. Trying to remove some of the white matrix or poach from the stone, and I'm also trying to keep in mind a couple of things. One, what shape am I shooting for in this finished stone? And two, how much carat weight can I preserve? As I'm doing this, I also have to keep in mind how thick the layer of color play or true precious opal there is in the stone to work with. If I cut too much off the top, I'll lose all of the fire in the stone. So I'm very slowly rounding out the top and very slowly cutting away anything that isn't precious opal. And in the process, this will help me to determine the shape of the opal that I'm going to end up with. And it will also give me a rough idea of what kind of orientation I want the stone to be. The other thing I want to point out is that I've skipped the first two grinding wheels and I've gone straight to the third wheel, which is a soft diamond Nova wheel. This wheel has about a 280 grit cutting surface, and it's a little bit pliable. If I push into the wheel, it bends slightly. And this does a couple of things. One, I don't have any chatter or vibration against the stone, so if there are any cracks in the stone, they are not going to proliferate as much as a grinding wheel might cause them to do. They're not going to expand. And this also means that later down the line I don't have as many rough areas I have to grind out. Obvious, I'm going to go with an oval. When I first looked at the opal, I decided I could possibly go with a pear shape because the fire extended up into a point past that white poach on one edge of the stone. But as I cut more and more of the stone away, the stone became an oval. I also like the ovals because when I'm cutting and setting an opal as a jeweler, I like to avoid points, which tend to be more problematic with opals since points can be fragile and more prone to breaking or chipping, either during the creation of a piece or while being worn. So opals kind of beg to be cut into ovals partially for durability, and also because an oval in some ways is more valuable because it's going to be more appealing to a wider range of audiences as well as other jewelers. Now I'm at the 600 grit range here, and I've reached a point where I found a little spot on the stone. And I have to make a decision as to whether or not I want to proceed any further and cut away more material and try to get rid of this spot, or if I'm going to leave it there. And one of the problems is that with a small little spot like that, it's not really an imperfection per se, as it's not a crack or a chip, but it definitely lowers the value of the overall stone to have this blemish right there in the middle. So what I actually did is I put this under a microscope where I can actually look down into the stone and see just how deep this goes. Well, it turns out it probably only extends down into the stone maybe about 1/10 of a millimeter. Whereas the fire, or the color play layer that I have to work with, is probably more like 1/2 a millimeter deep. So I decided to slowly go through the 600 grit on the surface of the stone and see if a few more passes with the grinding wheel will actually take the spot off. Okay, so I've jumped ahead a little bit, and what I have to show you now is that I've gone through the grits, I've removed that little black pock mark from the stone, and I'm ready to start the dry polish. And so what I want to point out are a couple of things. As I turn the stone, you get to see two distinct types of color play. One of them is called broad flash, which you can see here. You can see that there's a large wash of color play across the face of the stone. As I turn the stone to the opposite orientation, what we see is called Chinese writing color play. And then they call it this because it mimics the brush strokes of Chinese writing or brushwork or painting. So at this point, I've gone through all of the grits and the diamond compound pastes that I use, and these will polish all the way to the 1/2 micron grit size. To give you an idea of what a micron is, if you took a meter and you divided it into 1,000,000 segments, you took one of those segments, that would be the distance of 1 micron. So if you took that segment and divided it in half, that half would be the distance of a 1/2 micron. And a 1/2 micron is the finest grit that I use. And that'll put basically what I call a wet polish on a stone, so that even when it is dry, it'll almost look as if it is wet or covered in water. And that's the polish that I'm going for with a fine opal like this.